Hey friends, welcome back. I thought I would do something a little off script today and do my take on Christian movies. And I think everyone probably has an opinion about this. So this is kind of an opinion video, very much an opinion video, and would love to get your comments on it as well. But was joking with some friends just yesterday about what would they name God's Not Dead 5 and who would be starring in that as kind of a silly joke, and got a lot of really fascinating responses. And just it just started to make me think a little bit as I saw God's Not Dead 1, I saw God's Not Dead 2, just because. And I was a little appalled by some of it. And I think what the main, again, not just that movie, but just kind of in general, and Christian entertainment, I think there's this. There's this understanding of morality leading the way. And I think the biggest issue, probably in my estimation, of these movies is that all it really does is teach Christian morals or the law. It only teaches really the law. There's really no ability to understand that a Christian struggles with things. It's always the atheist or some other person who's lost their way, or it makes a Christian out to be this kind of do-gooder, self-righteous, kind of misinformed, kind of otherworldly creature or something like that. And you just kind of scratch your head wondering, how in the world is this really biblical, or is the message really ultimately the goal biblical? It's not as much about the gospel, for sure. It's certainly more about the law, and there might be a moment here and there that they kind of fit the gospel in, but certainly the pictures themselves are not informed by the gospel of Christ. And so there's just this concern that I would say with just general Christian movies, is that it really just teaches a brand of moralism and legalism in a way, without maybe trying to be that way. But again, a doctor might be trying to help you, and in the end hurts you dangerously. And it's not the issue of the heart; it was the issue of the execution that's the problem. So there might be many good-hearted people behind this. It's not a personal issue, but it's more of the product. And I think when you look at these movies and you think about what their message is, it's like they never grew up. You know what I mean? It's like these movies that are based upon kind of storybook Bibles for kids. Like there's a place for that. There's a place for teaching the themes and just some basic content of Bible characters and the like when it comes to children. Storybook Bibles and things like that. And people have different opinions about the use of that. And I really don't want to get into that as I comment on this today. But I'm simply saying it's like those movies never grew up. There's a time to grow up. You know, there's a time to grow up. I remember one pastor I used to serve underneath used to say, you know what, this is not youth group. Like there's a place for that. There's a time for that, but the messages need to grow up a little bit, okay? And I think he was right about that. I think there's a context for younger people, a context for children, but at some point we need the Bible. You know what I mean? We need really the scripture, what it says. And the people that are in that Bible are as earthy and real as it gets, right? They're just sinners like us, and we're just like them. And I think we do ourselves a disservice continuing to support, movies like this, because it's really disingenuous to the Christian message. And like I said, at best, good-hearted people, really poor execution, teaching some kind of legalism or moralism or just law keeping, really, with kind of this, maybe caveat or coda tacked onto the end with some kind of very unclear message about Jesus and forgiveness and things like this. But see, that's not the overarching message of these movies. They tack it on at the end, but the overarching message of the movie is you need to be a good person, essentially. That is so far from what the Bible's really teaching that it needs to be resisted, I think. And I don't think it's recoverable. And to be honest, I don't think we should be getting our. It's the same with Christian music to some level, okay. But we need to get back to the scriptures and not try to trust Christian media outlets or contemporary Christian music to be giving us our Christianity, folks. We really need to be watching carefully. There's problems on both sides. There's problems with secular stuff, But there's also problems with kind of Christian cultural things too, because of the way they construe things. It's really off kilter from really the ultimate message of Scripture and the gospel itself. Again, there's one thing to say, you know, we're going to kind of tack on this gospel thing, you know, at the end here for a moment. That's not really the gospel. The gospel's not a tacked on thing. The gospel's not this one little point you make at the end of a message. It is the whole message. It's the whole thing. It's the entire thing. And if you can't understand that, you might not understand the gospel. You might understand like this little message thing. If that's what you think it is, you don't get the gospel. The gospel is not one thing tied to the end to make a little bit of a point. It is the whole thing. It's the whole story. It's the man and the mission. It's the message and the man, right? Jesus is the gospel. He has a message for us to believe, but he is the gospel. The Bible is saying Jesus is the gospel. The Bible's a biography of Jesus, of God three in one, yes, but the center story is around Jesus of Nazareth coming, showing himself to be not just God in flesh, but the very Christ that the Old Testament expects. He lives a perfect life. He exudes the miracles, the works and words of God in Isaiah. He is that prophet. He is that priest. He is that king. He lives and he lives to die. He dies a substitutionary death. He dies in a way that is satisfactory for all of God's people, even though it has an invincible quality, an infinite quality for those that do not believe. And the reality is that he raises again from the dead, never to die again, Romans 6:10. He intercedes now forever for his people, the book of Hebrews says, and he has ascended into heaven, and he is gathering all things to himself in his lordship and his kingship for the final day, which he will judge the living and the dead, John chapter 5. The reality is the whole Bible's about Jesus, and it's not okay just to have a movie that tacks on a message about the gospel, because you don't get the gospel if that's how you do it, you know? So the reality is, I think we need to, as Christians, I think we need to not demand for better movies. I think we need to kind of grow up. We need to grow up and put that stuff down and say it's time to grow up. It's time to read the scriptures, to get into the Bible, not to trust, kind of Christian cultural outlets of media and movie sources and even contemporary Christian music to some degree. We need to get ourselves back to that and feed ourselves and be nourished and sustained by the words of the Lord, and allow that to shape our perspective, not these kind of cultural Christian kind of agendas and angles that kind of come into our lives and really miss a lot of the points of what the church is trying to proclaim and to witness to. So my 2 cents this morning about Christian movies and I think the off-kilterness of all that. So hopefully that's a good conversation starter. Would love to hear some of your comments below. Thanks so much. Signing off.